page is that? Where is that?
Oh, yeah, it's on the last page, and then page 4,
Number 10.
under 10, second paragraph. That had to have been Steve Favorite. He's from here. Okay.
And this next paragraph, a little silly thing, the article on our testing program I found out is going to be published next December, on December 2015.
Okay. Do we need to change anything in the minutes?
I don't care.
Okay. Then Steve has pointed out one change to be made. Given that change, does anyone else have any comments? Okay, with that change, I'll call for a vote to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved with that change. Did you catch the change, Karen?
I did.
Thank you. Then the next is consideration of the draft treasurer's report for December 31st, 2014. In Jeff's absence, I reviewed this with our bookkeeper, and all is normal. It's just a normal process of letting contracts, of invoicing for them, the number of pay periods, but everything is right on track. So without going into any more specific to us, anybody wants to, I'd ask for a motion to approve the draft treasurer's report and balance sheet subject to audit.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Then the attendance sheets. This is a normal thing that we do every now and then to pass out. And perhaps next month we can talk with Jeff, because there's a normal procedure that towns are notified at a certain period of time when their commissioners aren't attending. I think there is a, Jeff sends out a memo or something to the different towns, to the individuals first and then to the towns second. So are there any comments about the attendance?
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what month it was that I shared it for you?
The commission meeting itself? Yes, I do.
What month was it?
November.
That's what I thought. I'm down here as excused,
Oh, you are?
and I'd like to have a star for having shared the damn thing.
You should. You should. Would you,
I would point out that it's not a new problem, but almost half our membership are not participating in meetings, which is kind of a yellow flag, I guess. I don't know what the solution is, but it seems to be more absences than I've seen in previous years.
yeah, it is, and we've discussed it many times, and I don't have a silver bullet for it. It's a, I think as we've been trying to do, engage more commissioners in more things and have more programs that are educational things that they will come and be able to take things away back to their communities with. But it is a constant challenge. Maybe we just need to pay people more. Okay, this doesn't require a vote. This is for information. The next thing is the draft meeting schedule. We're really fine for a while. Jeff pointed out here that the normal day in November falls on Veterans Day. And we need to, it's just a personal opinion, but I think we should do something so that we don't have a meeting on Veterans Day. Being a veteran, there's a lot of activities that communities have on Veterans Day, and I think that we should accommodate the So we can ask Jeff to deviate from that Wednesday to look at either Tuesday or Thursday. Would that be an acceptable time? And see if he has any guidance as to which would be better. And, okay. We'll do that.
So did you say Wednesday or Thursday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday or Thursday?
Tuesday or Thursday, because the normal meeting's on a Wednesday.
Okay.
There's also, it's been developing a lot of restaurants do a lot of things now for veterans, free lunch, free dinners and things. And it's just a kind of a neat thing. Does anyone have any opinion as to whether they would prefer Tuesday or Thursday that week? Well, we'll let him come back with a recommendation. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chuck. Commission meetings. I have to ask him, he has two indicating here from Meredith in September and October. I wonder if there's a real reason. Well, it could be that where he's listed October as an optional meeting, that we,
One or the other.
yeah, it's one of the, yeah, either or. We'll have to, we can review this with him as we go forward. One of the things we are going to have to think about, though, as a group to give him guidance, is our annual meeting in June, speakers, who we should have as a speaker. Following the last one, we talked about that we have had several of the State Department heads, and it seems like we've run the course on that, that there should be somebody other than the State Department head speak. Does anybody, if you don't have any thoughts today, if you could be thinking about that. I was thinking about having somebody to talk about New Hampshire weather and the changes that have happened and what's going to be happening, you know, with the trends that are going on, because the weather affects everything that we as a commission touch in one way or the other. And it affects all your roads up there in Tufton Borough washing out and all this kind of stuff. That was the only deep thought I had. It might not be that deep.
And we have some speakers, several scientific, biological type conferences on that subject.
I sort of hate to think of it as climate change, because a lot of people fall asleep on that.
Yeah.
But just thinking that maybe we can get a weatherman from Channel
Yeah.
9 or somebody like that talking
About
about.
Ginger Z.
Who? Ginger Z? I don't know if she can stand the weather up here. I don't think so. Well, just my request was please be thinking about it, and we can discuss it, because we need to give Jeff some guidance as to who, what, where, or whatever. But I think the speaker at the annual meeting determines a lot of our attendance.
Who attends?
Who attends, yeah. Okay.
One thing that we did talk about, that we haven't done anything about, is we did talk about, well, maybe we ought to have smaller sort of sub-regional meetings, so that we can go into parts of the area that we never have meetings at. And what we do that with, I'm not sure. I don't think it makes sense to have a board that meets like this, because nobody else can come in the daytime. It would be better to be like a 6 o'clock meeting. But that maybe we should look at, I mean, maybe meeting once every 2 months isn't often enough to keep you an active member who comes to these meetings, because I certainly found that as just a member. That I would have liked it to happen a little more often, so I knew a little more about what was happening and could participate. And maybe the off one of that could be a regional group, and make the whole thing break into 2 or 3 areas. Because certainly when you look at the listing, I mean, we're back to the same 4 towns that we always have meetings at just now. And,
No, I think you've got a very valid point. And it could be that yeah, we do need to think about that. Because just to keep doing what we're doing, it doesn't work. And when you expect a different result from just doing what you're doing, you won't get a different result unless we do something different. We're breaking it up, or having the full commission meetings in different places, like coming to the Freedom General Store or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But also, I spoke with someone in the town, Freedom, at a meeting the other day, and I said, he's just come to live there, and I said, yeah, I really would like you to come and listen to a meeting of the Lakes region. And then I said, well, 2 months from now, I'll be in town, you know. And it's crazy, there ought to be something that you can say, right, I'll take you to that and come and see, we'll meet in another couple of weeks, you know.
That's a good point. Let's stay focused on it. Thank you. Moving into the LSRs, the legislative process that has just begun. It was included a list of different LSRs, legislative service requests. These are the ones that the legislators put in to have bills written. I noticed one, and this would be the third session in a row where there's a bill proposed that requiring the planning board and zoning board of adjustment members be elected, not appointed. In the last 2 sessions, this was put in, and it's my feeling when you read the RSAs that that's totally unnecessary, because the RSAs now allow for all municipalities to determine whether they want to have their planning board members elected or appointed. There is one exception, and the exception is cities. The 13 cities cannot elect, they have to appoint. And in terms of the cities, they have counselors, and the counselors interview, vet, and appoint. And that's never the way that these bills are written. And they've gone to there's a committee. The committee that will hear this is the Committee on County Government and Municipal Affairs or something like that. And the last 2 committees, they're experienced people that are on those committees that are appointed to them. And last time it went down to total defeat unanimously to ITL, inexpedient to legislate. So I'm hoping that will happen again.
You saved your testimony from last time, right?
Yeah. Well, last time there was, and again, it shows lack of research or homework, because there was a bill put in to eliminate the planning commissions. And the current laws allow every municipality to determine for themselves whether they want to be a member of the planning commission. And so it's a bit disturbing that legislators that don't do their homework put in bills, and then it has to go to committee and all the people and the time that it takes when the law already allows it.
Do you know, is this the same person or group of people that proposed this?
This legislator that's proposing this one, I don't recognize the name from the previous one. The previous one was Jane Cormier. She was a freshman rep from Alton who moved out of our region. And so the issue, one of the issues is that as soon as they write these things, they go to committee, and then the committees hold the hearings like quick. It's like in February. Because the last couple of times I brought this item before the executive committee here, and we've taken a vote, and I was able to represent the commission saying, no, don't do that. But the process in our own town of city of Laconia, there wasn't enough time to catch another meeting to have a full vote. And so I expect, if that same process holds true, in February, this thing will come up. And so if it does come up, I'll ask Jeff to keep his eye on it. And if they have the hearing, I'll go down and just speak as an individual.
You know, I know in Guilford, all of our board members, I believe, possibly one exception, they all said, well, if I have to go run for office, forget it, I'm done. So, you know, I know it would not be something that would promote a lot of people having an opportunity to serve on a planning board. I think it would reduce, actually,
the amount of service and willingness of people to serve on planning boards.
I got that same reaction in Laconia also. Because generally the people that are more prone to want to serve their communities by serving on ZBAs or planning boards aren't the gregarious march in the parades and shake hand type people. And so I think that the motivation might be that they think that it would be more transparent and more the voters could determine. But I agree, exactly the opposite would happen. We have a challenge now, and I would suspect it's true with all municipalities, of staffing the boards, of getting enough people. Laconia is running right now without any alternates. We can't get people to apply for it.
That's true. Freedom elects its planning board, it doesn't have them appointed. And it did it evidently, because I asked them, and you all started discussing this, because they don't trust the selectmen. And so they wanted them to go with other people. And it's, I think, looking at the way it happened, is that you put your name down that you want to run, and then you get elected because nobody else puts their name down. So it's really not much different than being elected, but it is a pain.
But Freedom has the authority now under the current RSAs that if you decide that you want to change that, you just through your system, I think it's the town meeting system, could put that in to change it back that you have them appointed.
I would guess that they would. They want to change it.
Chamworth elects also, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't go with that at all now.
But that's the beauty of the current law. Each municipality can decide for itself.
As like Tuftonboro, the planning board is appointed, or budget committee is elected. And then those who tend to fail to get elected as selectmen run the budget committee.
Oh.
So it turns out to be kind of an anti-selectmen group.
See, in cities, we don't have budget committees.
I didn't get that.
Cities operate differently. And personally, I'm really glad that I'm in a city form of government. It's, at least we have 6 counselors, and our challenge is just educating 6 people rather than educating.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get over emotionalism. It always enters into everything, but well, not to drag it out. But
Can I ask you a question about this before we leave this?
yeah,
Where do I find out what they say? Like, not 0096R is relative to the definition of meeting under the right to know law. I'd just like to know what this lady is proposing. Where do I read about it?
Normally, you can go on to the New Hampshire government website, which I did this week, and none of them have, I couldn't find any narrative information available yet, but as they're proposed, you can get it on, going to New Hampshire government, and it'll show you a listing of all the LSRs. And, when they're
There was another one about the ZBAs.
isn't it while they're in the LSR stand situation, they're not written yet, but just before they go to committee, they have to be written, and so you can get them online then.
yeah,
But it's pretty, it's one of those short notices.
it's not a lot of lead time.
Sometimes you actually have to go to the first hearing to actually hear the language.
I think if there was one you were really interested in, it might be to contact the sponsor, get something from them directly.
Or on the committee calendars, they always list the bills that they're going to discuss at the committee level, Gene. And it might be that you have to look at the topic of the bill and then figure out what committee they're going to be heard by. And most of these on here would, that are relative to like, oh, I don't even want to say that. I don't know what committee they'd be assigned to.
Yeah. John, do you know, does the New Hampshire Planning Association have a subcommittee that looks into?
They do, yeah.
Do you think that they would have listings of these bills?
Yeah, I bet they do. Yeah, I would think.
It might be worth finding out and then just feeding their information back, if they've already done the work. you know.
They may not yet, you know, I don't
Yeah.
know, I haven't looked on the website, but I have, I'm quite sure that they usually have a little, you know, rundown for each amendment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the problem is, right now, they're not available. New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commissions was going to meet this week, I believe, to start reading through these, and they canceled the meeting because there wasn't any substance available to review.
Right.
And so that's another source, is I
Yes.
represent us on that.
Right.
As
Right,
soon
definitely.
as they get it, I can.
Thank you.
That would be great, Bob, if you did, and if you fed it into the staff upstairs, they could email it out to
Yeah,
us.
and Jeff's tied into that even closer than I am, so as soon as that stuff's available,
That would be good. We
Jeff
talked about that
Jeff can
last
get
year,
it out.
yeah, doing something about it for the next year.
I think it's fascinating going to these hearings, and if you haven't had a chance, and there is one of these bills that you're interested in, please, if you can, go, because you sign in ahead of time whether you want to speak or not, and you don't have to speak, you can just sign in opposition for or in favor of, or if you want to speak, then the chairperson of the committee generally goes one person for, the next person against, and it's fascinating to hear the actual viewpoints of both sides. Because even if you're opposed to something and people are for it, there's a lot what they say that you need to think about. And so I'd recommend it, but it does happen in February, and it happens fast when it happens, you know, when they schedule the things. So it isn't like you can plan your life around it. Yes, George?
Sometimes to be elected to something is more of a popularity thing. You can get a person who doesn't qualify for the job, win the election, versus picking a person that qualifies for the job. So, like chief of police, I can't picture winning because of popularity rather than qualification. That's my theory there. There's a good thing for either one, but different jobs, different things.
Yeah, I agree. And knowing the people on our planning board, I can't think of anyone on there that would want to go through the general election process. And we have some very, very capable people on that board. So we'll ask Jeff to keep us apprised of when these different ones are coming up for committees. But generally, I was very impressed a couple times with the representatives that are put on the committees. Generally have some kind of a background in that subject area, and so it isn't. It just gives you a little comfort that somebody is reviewing these things rather than just tossing them on the floor. Okay. Active subcommittee reports. Transportation attack. There's nothing new to report there. Mike Izzard is working on the major proposal to the state DOT for the scope of work and the deliverables for the next 2 years for the funding and for all the transportation efforts that the commission does. It's the largest program that we have and administer and fund generations. The Transit Authority, I didn't see a report from Pink Taylor. They ought to be pretty happy though with the governor coming out supporting the rail line. NATO news, it was in your brochures. Are there any questions about the NATO news? An executive committee report was in your packet. Any questions about that report? Okay.
This report that is about the Rail Transit Authority from Malcolm Taylor, is that the same person?
Oh,
Same
let's check.
thing.
Yeah, I didn't see that. That was in there? Oh, I'm sorry. I looked at it online. Any questions about it?
No, I was just intrigued with it. They were talking about it this morning on the radio, and I was coming in, talking about whether they're at the point where they're going to re-investigate the studies they've done before and just see if they still have the same figures,
Oh, good.
or whether the figures have changed of usage and potential use.
We're very lucky that Tank represents us and is passionate about this, so we'll see where it goes.
Can I make, since Jefferson, can I jump back to
Yeah.
the LSR thing? Jeff and I both brought up, I think a couple of meetings ago, last year, that we were felt a little bit concerned about the process and how the New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commissions, who has a lobbyist to represent the consensus of regional planning commissions on bills as they come up. Yet there's no process in place for us, for example, to really gather what our constituency feels about any particular bill. So Jeff and I go in supposedly representing the Lakes region, 30 towns, and we have really no input other than our own as to take a position for or against or neutral on a particular bill. So you might want to think about, how we might want to improve our own process so that Jeff and I have some basis to put forth an opinion on some of these things. And one might be to take a close look at these as they move through the process and identify whether any of them are really important to us. I can't see us getting involved in however many they're all here. And this is, by the way, this has already been screened. This is just a small subset of the total number of FLSRs that are being put through. But of these, there might be one or two or three that are of particular interest to the Lakes region, and it would be kind of appropriate if we go ahead, for example, to the notion of bringing legislatures in for a legislative meeting evening to focus on those 2 or 3 issues, and maybe even ultimately bring it to a vote at one of our meetings. But right now, we track these things, but Jeff and I are asked to, put forth an opinion whether we want to actively support one in the legislature through the New Hampshire Association, but we have no input. So it's just a thought that it's worth taking a look at these and seeing if any of them really ring a bell and something we want to express an opinion on. For example, something that had to do specifically with lakes management, we would be particularly interested in, and Jeff and I can focus on those and push the New Hampshire Association to give those some weight.
We could just communicate to the 30 towns what those things delineate and ask for their input relative to if they have any interest in any one of those. I mean, to the commissioners and to the town.
We could do that.
The biggest thing is just finding out that, one, there's activity on it and what they're proposing.
Yeah, right, and we're not there yet.
We're not there,
But that would be a good idea, is maybe go out for a direct solicitation. So anyway, something to think about how we can improve that process and make sure we do get involved in ones that are important to our region.
Well, I would support that too, that we ask Jeff to electronically communicate to all of our commissioners even this couple-page list here of LSRs, because of, there are different people that get passionate about different things, or that if it's going to affect them. And by alerting them to the fact that, geez, there is something coming down the pipeline, they can then investigate and begin their lobbying for their position. I like that idea.
And maybe to include how they would go about doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, what website they'd go look at to get more detail.
That's excellent. We can, I'll follow up with, because this will need to start getting in gear before our next executive board meeting, because with the committee assignments down at, in Concord, these will get assigned really, really quick, committees. So I'll talk to Jeff about that, about sending out the like this list to all the commissioners, and then how they can find things out, and how they can find what the schedule is, and so forth, and what committees they'll be assigned to. That'd be very good. I like that idea.
Did they reschedule the old meeting, Bob?
They have not.
They have not.
Super. That's a good thing. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee Investment Policy Recommendation. If I could, I just put together a little bit here. The Investment Committee has a recommendation for the Executive Board for action today. And what this, we have been discussing for the last couple of years, our investment fund, as to how to reposition it so that we generate more income from it. And what we have done is that, following the direction of this board, the Finance Committee, which by our bylaws consists of the Treasurer, Secretary, Vice Chair, and Chair, with Jeff, we have been investigating alternative investment strategies. And what we would like to propose today is the one that we want to begin with, is moving our money from the New Hampshire, I forget exactly what that's called.
New Hampshire PDIP.
Yeah, into an investment account with Morgan Stanley. Now, what this would do for us, an investment account is not a long-term contract. It's simply assigning and having an account with them, and they would then become our investment advisors. And we have met with Morgan Stanley, and they have recommended a investment program which consists mainly of ETFs, which are exchange-traded funds. What these are is funds now that are comprised of funds in the different sectors. This executive board at a former meeting did approve an investment policy, and this investment program would fit our investment policy of security, but generating a fund full of dividends. It would, and John had made a point of that as we move our investments, that we would want to do two things. One, draw off some for operations, and secondly, grow that fund. Morgan Stanley is proposing that their plan would allow us to generate approximately 8% a year. And it would be comprised of two elements. One would be the dividend flow, and the other would be the appreciation of the investment assets. And so at 8% on 336,000, which we have that would generate $26,000 a year. Currently, we're realizing $500 a year from the New Hampshire program. Now, of that 26,000, their estimate would be that it would be about 9 to 10,000 would be dividends, and the rest would be appreciation of the portfolio. So, in that regard, it would accomplish the two ends, that we would be increasing the value of our portfolio at the same time, drawing off the dividends, which could be used to support the operating needs of the association.
Is there a fee?
Yes, their fee is 1%, which when we looked at others, their fees were like 1.5%. One company, I believe it was Fidelity, I wrote down there, has instituted a new policy that they do not have customers that are political subdivisions, and we are a political subdivision of the state of New Hampshire. And so their program is now locked out. They were having conflicts between within Fidelity. When we looked at the other Cambridge, they were like 1.5%, and there was a minimum fee that we would have to guarantee each year. With Morgan Stanley, it's 1% with no base guarantee. And the dividends would be available, if this board agrees, to the association for the operating side, or they could be left there, depending upon our cash needs. As you can see from the balance sheet that we sent out, we have like $72,000 that are in our cash management program with Meredith Village Savings Bank, and that's the one that the association uses to go in and out of for their operating expenses and payroll. And so 92,000, we have, the Finance Committee has asked Jeff to look at that and to determine, is that the correct amount to have in there? Is it, because if that money was moved into the Morgan Stanley, then of course we would generate that anticipated 8%. And so that's a function that he's going to look at. But our intent at this time is to ask for the permission by a vote of the Executive Committee to move the $336,000 into a Morgan Stanley account.
Is there any protection in there? I know there's no FDIC there.
There is none.
Yeah.
The protection comes through this mechanism of the electronically traded funds, in that they have a huge basket of stocks that they do trade.
How many companies are involved in
The basket.
Morgan Stanley? Is it like 1,000 different companies, or is it 5?
They have different, there are different ETF funds for different segments. And what we, as a committee, did was to go over our investment policy with them in terms of the security and the balance that we wanted, and they will select the different funds that comply with that policy, that investment policy.
I know sometimes when there's like 1,000 different companies, you're protected because they're not going to all go down at the same time.
That's exactly the principle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's one company, you're protected by, there's an insurance policy type of thing for all insurance companies. So you're protected that way. When there's a small amount of companies, it's risky.
Yeah, these, the funds that they'll be recommending to us, the ETFs, are ones comprised of 1,000 different companies within that segment. So what's the risk for us? The risk for us is that we're be participating in the general market, and the asset value can rise and fall. The counter to the risk is the professional management of Morgan Stanley, the fact that we're joining in with a type of program that's one of the, on the second page, the growth in the US listed ETFs is huge. And the number of companies that are in each of these funds, just like you said, you know, one can rise, the other can fall.
In addition to having access to our dividends for whatever use we might see, I assume we also have access to the principal
Absolutely,
at any point in time without penalty.
without penalty.
Okay. I guess the big question that pops into my mind is, we have something, what, 300,000 something,
336,985.
whether we want to put that entire amount into this mechanism or leave a portion of that, not as insurance, but as a more safe place where it is. So, you know, maybe put 200,000 or 250,000 in a mechanism that gives us some growth and return on investment, and leave 100,000 or so in a more protected state. It's just a thought. We don't have to put the whole 330,000 in this if we choose not to.
I think that's a viable alternative, and do it for a period of time, a year or two, and see what Morgan Stanley does. If they do what they say they can do, and it looks like it's going to continue, then I would continue to move more of that money into that Morgan Stanley. I would take the whole 100% today.
This Morgan Stanley, their office is in Guilford, and I'm actively involved in our church, the Guilford Community Church, and we did move all our money into, now, all of our money, it's like this, it's around 300,000 into a Morgan Stanley account about 4 or 5 years ago, and we've been very pleased with the results of it. And then the Bayside Cemetery, the one that's up by McIntyre Circle, it's by Lowe's and Shaw's up there. I'm on the board of directors there, and we moved our money into a Morgan Stanley account also, and I've been pleased with it too. I'll just give you that as reference point. I just look at the 8% return. Now, could it be 7? Could it be 9? Could it be 6? But when you compare it against what we're doing now, and we have stayed where we are because of safety, and also with the change of executive directors, this committee didn't, and I agreed with that, didn't want to make a change until we had some stability there. But and as an individual, I have all my money in through a wealth management company, not this one, but similar to it. And I think the professionalism of what these companies bring offset a risk factor. So I would be more, personally, more anxious to move the entire amount over. But if we decided to do a 50 or 75% or whatever, I can understand that. But it just seems to me that with the potential that is there, and it is realized, and this isn't a brand new program, and we do need income, and we need growth.
We looked at
Couple
our,
of comments, maybe.
Yes, sir.
First, just if you take a look at the graph.
Yes, sir.
Page 2, it's important to, you have to take a look at that and say this represents profits or increasing values. And it is not that at all. It's the dollars invested in ETFs, not how the ETFs are actually doing. Personally, I think a goal of 8% is maybe nice to set up, but actually, in the long term, that would represent a pretty aggressive investment approach, I think. What's really important is what time period did they calculate their investments to come up with 8%? If it's over the last 4 or 5 years, anybody can do that. I mean, because they've been really great years for growth. 8% is calculated on the last 4 or 5 years, it's dangerous to assume that 8% is going to be for the next 4 or 5 years, in my mind. If you take a look at lots of investments, even like who's on the radio, like Clark Howard, in his investment advice, if you go for 5%, if your goal is 5%, that's pretty damn good. He would classify 8% as being extravagant, with the exception of the last 4 or 5 years, where things have tripled. So I would approach this cautiously, and I think part of our funds and see what happens next is maybe even more important than what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years. So I would go with part of our funds, would be my take.
That's a very reasonable approach.
Do we know what our static balance has been like over the last 4 or 5 years?
Of the amount in there?
Yeah.
I don't have that information right in front of me, Steve. I think it
That's
hasn't,
right, just a little under 300,000.
yeah, it hasn't grown hardly at all. And it's only throwing on to us $500 a year. So that desire for safety, I mean, in my opinion, we're paying far too high of a price for having it sit down in that account. But instead of moving all 336, we could move, we could just.
I'll propose this. I move that we authorize the executive director to set up an account with Morgan Stanley, investment account, and to move 200,000 from New Hampshire PDIP to the investment account, and to report quarterly to this executive board the results of that, and to be evaluated on an annual basis as to the retain that account or change the amount on an annual basis.
I can second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I agree with a lot of what John said. At 8%, everybody would be on board. That's part of their success. You look at the growth of these funds, the funds are trading and they're popular. So they may be at an inflated value. At some point, their ability to generate additional capital is going to diminish with less opportunity. So, and to look at this on a quarterly basis, I don't think it's going to mean much to you. If the market's good, then the return's going to be good. When the market goes south, and we can't predict that. Half the time it goes south, it's because everybody's trying to predict it and jump ship before everybody else does. We'll be the last in line. So we have to accept, if we're going to take this step, we have to accept this risk.
Yes.
So if we gamble, some of the times we're going to lose. I think if you look at long-term investments, it's hay. So as long as we're willing to, as long as we understand that if we go through another 2007, 2008, 2009 situation, those funds aren't going to grow. And we're going to pay 1% from our balance to keep Morgan Stanley alive.
But during that period of time, though, the companies that they still throw off the dividends. It's a very serious decision of a company to cut the dividend flow. And so that generally maintains itself, the dividend side.
It'll keep it alive. I mean, we'll all lose our shirt, but if there's a big market turn down, we'll lose some of our investment.
Yes.
We just have to,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing against this.
Yeah.
I think long-term investment policy would say that an established firm like this, we're going to gain over our current conservative approach. We just have to know it's gonna be a roller coaster sometimes. So you can't look at that money as money you can budget. I think you have to look at that money as, we get in a jam, maybe it'll bail us out. Or allow us to do something a little more extravagant that we might have.
No, you're right, there is risk, and that's one of the reasons why Kim had never recommended any change whatsoever. He didn't want to assume any risk. But I think given with the right investment advisor, then we can assume the risk. And again, for the commission here, we have that $93,000 in money management at Meredith Village Savings, which is used for the balancing of our cash flow needs. And to my knowledge, I can't recall when we've ever drawn money out of this long-term account. It's just sat there. So, no, I would support this $200,000 and we'll evaluate it. And again, the investment account with Morgan Stanley has no requirement that we have to be with them 2 years or anything of that nature. If at any time this group decided to take a move, we could take that.
And it is true that if the market goes south, the 1% decreases also, so we pay them less.
Yeah. But when the value of the stocks erode, that does not mean that you own, because it's actually ownership of companies through this fund, and so we still own the company. It's just their share price has been adjusted because of the market conditions.
I like the low 1% rate. It means they're gonna be conservative about trading. And it's trading fees that knock the heck out of them. It's great for them. The more they trade, the more they can bill. I'm talking about other.
Yeah, this is a fee for service.
Fix 1%, they gotta be pretty careful about how they trade, and I think that's a vote for it.
Yes, Pat.
Having been at that meeting, a couple of things that I want to emphasize too, is that they base the different sectors that are involved, be it technology or health or whatever, energy, they go very much according to Standard & Poor's recommendations. And the other point that he made that we haven't mentioned on this is that there are times that things go down. Different sectors would go down, but on the other hand, because of them going down, other sectors go up, and it kind of balances out quite a bit. I felt pretty good about that meeting, and I think what I would like to say is that I agree that we should keep some out, but I'm going to suggest that we go to 225 instead of 200, and keep more than 100 that we put in another place that's quote safe, and go along with what you're saying about reviewing it on a systematic basis.
Well, as you know, the Finance Committee, we didn't discuss splitting
No, we didn't.
the amount like that. But I agree, it's a very good thing, because we'll know within 6 months or so how this is going, and then we can adjust it there. So I would be more apt to support Wayne's motion of, let's move the 200, leave the balance exactly where it is, review this on a quarterly basis, and then as an executive board, we can, just by a vote of the executive board, can decide on, do we want to move the other over, or what we want to do.
Do I understand that you're saying that there is this 92,000 that is existing?
Yes.
In like a different account?
Yeah, it's over there in,
Right.
in the bank.
And there also is an account that is the day-to-day running of the office and the money?
They're both over there.
And how much is that?
92,000. We have
Yeah.
92,000.
So that there aren't two accounts, there's only the 92,000 one.
There's actually 3 accounts.
Well, that's what I wondered.
There's 2 in Meredith Savings, which is a cash management and a checking account,
Right,
which is used for the operating budget, okay, throughout the year.
right.
And then we have an investment account with the Hampshire PDIP that's got $336.
And how much then does the cash flow one have in it? Because we already have one with 92,000.
No, you have one with 74 and one with 14 something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
so
sort of
give it-
treated
they're
as the
both-
same thing over
I
there.
see, right.
All the money goes into the cash management and sits there until they need to move it to write checks.
So there's in effect 100,000 already running
Yeah,
the organization.
yes.
And so this, yes. Now, I would agree that it should be, well, I would make it all personally, because, I mean, I would vote for it to put all of that in, because we have this 100,000 already that keeps the place afloat. And I think that one of the real problems that I find that the towns have with this is this, that there doesn't seem to be ever enough money to do something to justify becoming a member of this organization and paying the dues that the towns pay. And I think that it might be, if we had more money coming in through this part of this program, that it would make a big difference to the way in which the towns received commission. And I have discussed this with a few people.
The 74,000 or the 90,000 that's in the cash management is used throughout the year to fund the operation.
Right.
And our budget is what, 800,000 or 900,000? That's not a lot of money to fund that.
No, it's not.
So I disagree with what you're saying. I think we should keep some close to 100,000 in that PDIP, okay, as an emergency fund, until we really understand what Morgan Stanley, well, the world here is doing.
But all we've been making is this little bit of money on it.
Yes.
But maybe we should walk before we run. It's-
Yeah, I'm not very good at that, you know. Right. Anyway, that's,
So the motion is on the floor to move to authorize and direct Jeff to move 200,000 from the New Hampshire dip into an account with Morgan Stanley, following the investment policy that we did approve and that they very much agreed with. They had just a couple minor changes which they were going to propose to Jeff, and they were fine with us. And then we'll evaluate it quarterly and see what happens. Any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, raise their right hand. All those opposed? Let the record show the vote was unanimous. And the record will show, and Wayne and I'll meet with Jeff so that he understands. Super. That was huge. The Personnel Policy Committee want to postpone the discussion on this until we go into non-public, and there'll be a reason for that. Updates and announcements. These I'd like to postpone until next month, until Jeff can report on them personally. If there's no disagreement with that. Then the board roundtable. Wayne, anything happening in your neck of the woods?
Pretty quiet. Got nothing to speak of, no.
Steve?
We had a little event with our library issue in Tuckenboro where some members of the public objected to the selectmen using the capital investment fund, that's not the right term, capital improvement fund for the library, to take down a building that's on the proposed site for the library, and also to use it to get, to finalize the architect's plan so they can ask for bids. So the theory being they'll know an exact amount for town meeting, and of course the objector said this is something the town has turned down before, the construction of the library, therefore you can't spend money on it. And so they had to go ask the town attorney, and also they went to the state government center, and they were advised that the selectmen did have the authority to do that. So it's, the building's coming down, and they're going to have bids in for construction of the building for town meeting. at 3.2 million, I think. It's, you know, we talked about this different in a town meeting on the state regulations. Town meeting, you have to come up with, for a bond issue, you have to come up with 2/3 versus, I think, city or the semi, I forget what it's called, like Wolfboro has, they only have to come up with 60%. And tough board's already come up with a 60%, but they can't come up with a 66% for the library. That's a little interesting quirk.
Well, keep us informed, that's interesting, that's a lot of money. Jean?
No, I think they're all frozen actually, not doing anything. They're preparing for the warrant for the town meeting and attempting to hold public hearings for public works and library and things like that. So we should planning board request, because we have this master plan that's potentially going to happen. But that's about it.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I agree that Tamworth is frozen too, except I was noting in the minutes from the meeting I missed last month, that a comment during the roundtable was about, but I don't know whether it was Freedom or whatever, but that they had done a budget review of other towns or whatever, to see what about their compensation for employees. And I wanted to say that Tamworth recently did that. And it was very impressive, I might add, that they interviewed many towns. And I would say that the idea, I think it was someone, John Hayes, I guess, there was a comment that he had suggested that we all share perhaps when there's been research done that might be useful to other neighboring towns.
What was it, our John Ayers?
Yes.
Oh.
I thought it said John Hayes, and I thought it was John Hayes, but maybe they, was it you that said that?
This is regarding what again, I'm sorry?
A review, well, regarding the sharing of information among the board members of studies that maybe have been done in their town. I don't think it was,
Yeah, I don't think it
I'll look up in the minutes.
Sounds brilliant.
It sounds great, it was great if you didn't, whatever. My point being that I think that's a great idea, that when a town does some very in-depth research that might have taken with very retired but professional people, and interviewed incredible numbers of towns to get actual salaries and comparative, like similar comparisons, to come up with police chief, administrative, I mean, all of the different people who are employees, to be able to say, here's a copy of that, because we included your town in our comparison. In other words, we should share information, is the bottom line.
Yep.
And that's one thing that Tamworth could share if in fact that's something that anyone needed.
All right, so.
I think that would be excellent.
That would be
They
excellent.
talk to Freedom too.
Yes.
Barbara, Molten Borough?
Very quiet.
Has there been any reaction from the select board about the dues structure that you've heard of?
Not that I've heard of. No news is good news,
Are you still with us?
as far as I
Oh,
know.
good, okay.
Till 16.
Okay. John?
No news budget hearing for the public is next week, so that's when the fireworks start.
John? Guilford?
Similar with Guilford, although the hiring process is underway for a replacement for Sheldon Morgan as the Public Works Director, and they're about to award, if they haven't yet, the a job for expanding our police department, police building, so. But not much in the way of development. We're more curious about what's happening in Laconia.
So you have to wait for a couple of weeks. Do you know if the select board, Sheldon was going to discuss with them his continuing on the TAC committee
Yeah,
representing Guilford?
I know I mentioned something to him about that, and he said, yeah, this was before he retired, but he was willing to do that. Kicking around the idea, not sure how the select
Yeah.
You're not
feel
sure
about that. So.
Because he's a resident of Guilford and can represent Guilford on the TAC committee and the members of the TAC committee.
Yeah.
I sit on that committee representing this board, and Sheldon's an outstanding chairperson of that.
Yeah.
Just very, very
Yeah.
good and knowledgeable too. So I hope that works out that way.
Yeah.
George?
New Hampton, They're still working on the rehab center, you know, paperwork and everything like that. And there was I guess a customer for a whatever name that is, it's 104 Plaza. The building, they were thinking of knocking the building down, which they just rehabbed, you know, and taking the gas tanks out and everything else and putting another bigger building there. But we never heard anything since on that. But, you know, it's just somebody inquiring, a company inquiring.
Oh.
But that's about the size of Hampton right now.
Mr. Holderness?
Nothing in Holderness.
Well, in Laconia, the biggest, a big thing for the planning board, which we're going to hold a public hearing on next month, is early acceptance of streets. We have developers putting in subdivisions, and one came before us and wanted us to approve the street as a city street prior to it being completed. And so we got all into our regulations and things like that, and had a discussion at the planning board level, and we're coming in with a recommendation that, yes, we will accept streets early with a acceptable punch list remaining that DPW develops with the developer, and then an actual funding, either cash or letter of credit, of I think it's like 115% of the anticipated expense of doing the completing the punch list. And then we added a provision in there that at least 20% of the lots have been sold, and COs issued, certificates of occupancy, so that there would be a higher level of tax revenue to the city that would compensate the city for the expense of plowing and trash pickup. That's primarily, well, there's three things: it's plowing, trash pickup, and having the buses pick up the kids, because the buses cannot go onto private roads. And so this is done, and our city council has been very much for this. And according to our city charter, it has to come through the planning board before the city council can take an action on street acceptance. Yes, John?
What about water supply?
The water supply and sewer has to be underneath that road, and the road has to have the base coat on it, and it has to have gone through a one-year cycle. And that's so that the DPW can assess is the compaction right, and is the base right. There is a provision they can ask for waivers if a third party selected by the city, paid for by the developer, has inspected the construction of that street through the entire process.
What is the present acceptance policy?
It was a shade vague, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, and we're documenting it also, that there be a completely transparent process for any developer to look at. This is for early acceptance of streets. In order to have a street accepted under a normal process, it has to come up to all city standards. And we have a lot of private, as all towns do, a lot of private roads. And the biggest constraint of private roads going accepted by the city is generally the width. The city requires a 50-foot easement down through. And then the road has to be built to city standards also, which are really copied after the state standards in terms of the layers. But the reason that we're doing this is so that developers will come to Laconia and not to your towns. And because in order to sell houses, it's very much an advantage for a developer to have the house on a city accepted street. With,
Sure.
and so that's really why this is being done. We don't have that many. I mean, it's a case of really putting everything so that it can be completely transparent, and so there is a mechanism if a developer. And we got, we're getting into all of our, the city charter and the subdivision regulations to ensure that all streets that are built within subdivisions have to be built to city standards. There was a question about could they be built to non-city standards and just as private roads all the time. And the initial developer, many of them want to do it that way because it's far cheaper for them. But for the first generation and the second generation homeowner, that's very much a disadvantage that it's not on the city street. So that's one of the big things. We have also addressing the marijuana dispensary issue and developing our regulations for that. State law now permits so many marijuana by prescription dispensaries within the state. I think it's 4 or something like that. And it's a case of either you have your regulations, you can't stop them under state law, but you can influence where they're going to be in your community. And so we're working on that too.
Is that something you need to have in place ahead of time?
Yes.
So this is of concern to you, even though there's only, I guess, 4 in the state of New Hampshire. In the future, that potentially could expand. So what I hear you saying is it might be prudent for all towns to get into their zoning regulations some requirements for that.
Yes. And the state, I'm on that task force and we're just going to meet, in fact, this week. And the state, there's like 12 pages of regulations concerning it. So you have to understand what those are, and then you have to look at your zoning and table of uses within your zones.
So what kind of things would you be concerned of? You know, I'm sure this is in the state stuff, but making sure it's not located across the street from school.
That kind of thing, yeah.
And I assume those are all in state regulations. So have you concluded that the state regulations are not sufficient?
Yes, we have, and we have zoning, and so we have to determine on our table of use what zone that we will allow this this thing in.
When are you going to have that done?
Yeah, I want a copy of it.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to work on it right this week, in fact. And so I'm not sure when it will be done.
Yeah. The other little issue, and if any towns have dealt with it, I'd certainly be interested, and that is we're seeing more and more large solar voltaic arrays being installed other than on the roofs of houses. So, you know, 12-foot by 40 feet arrays sitting in a yard, and it's considered an ancillary structure, which means it could be 35 feet, say, from your neighbor's house. If anybody's dealt with that, I'd be interested in what kinds of constraints they put on
That just came up as a subject on Plan Link. Do you read Plan Link?
My planning board chairman does and circulates stuff too, so if there's something
That
on
came
there-
up as a topic on Plan Link about 3 or 4 months ago, with a lot of good input.
Okay.
The state's actually drafting a model ordinance, and there's going to be some training coming up soon, within the next month on that. And I'll see if I can find that and send that to you.
Okay.
I'll send it to everybody here.
That would be great.
It's gonna be an issue. We have, I think, 3 of them now in Holderness. One's sitting right on the bank of a lake.
Yeah, it's been an issue with Guilford too.
Yeah, it's becoming an issue.
That will also be one that most probably the planning commission will get involved in, because under the current RSA's, any impact that has a regional implication, like if Guilford wants to put it exactly on the Laconia line, then the planning commission gets involved as it's classified similar to the butter. And so.
Development of regional impact.
That's it, yeah. You know, always tell the pros. Okay, great. Any other?
I had 2 questions for you.
Yes, sir.
What happened to KFC and what's going in the place of the old Victorian house there?
Oh, I can answer, thank you. I can answer both of those. I love it when I can answer a question I can answer. KFC on Union Avenue has been demolished. Taco Bell's going in there. And it's under construction right now. They have the footings in and they're putting up the walls. There was one subsurface drainage issue that we were concerned about that's being resolved because it butts up exactly onto Black Brook.
Yeah.
And that's where all this stuff comes down from Guilford that ends up in the Comeau water supply.
Filtered through KFC.
Guilford and Laconia are working very well together on this. They are working on funding a study of Black Brook that wanders all the way down from up into Guilford by Walmart, by the banks in front of Lowe's, all through there, and then it ends up right directly into August Bay, which is the water supply source for Laconia. And so Guilford.
And some of Guilford as well. All the municipal water we have comes from that same spot. All that commercial area, that's all served by Laconia's municipal water. And there are a few homes, a few hundred homes probably right along the town line there with Laconia that have municipal water.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Interestingly enough, yeah.
Well, this study, the Conservation Commission is in charge of it, and they're working, the two towns are working very well together to come up with a study of that brook to determine what should be done in order to clarify it. The other thing was on Union Avenue where the Hathaway house was torn down. It is a single lot with the Dunkin' Donuts, and what's going in there is a building which will house 3 stores. The building will look similar to the architectural design of the Dunkin' Donuts. As under our subdivision regulations, the planning board has a great authority over architectural. And we did work with the owners and the architects to come up with a building that is set back from the roads, and there'll be 3 stores in there. I did hear through the grapevine, through the realtor grapevine, and sometimes that's faster than anything else, that the subway is going to relocate from 8 Gables, which is down near Canton, into one of those. But I have no authority whether that's going to take place or not. It would be very good for them, I think. It would be a good use of the site. But it is under the, they've put the footings and they're well on the way. There's going to be a longer queue line for cars that pick up at their takeout window, because even though it's a substantial improvement of what was across the street, on peak times, traffic does back up on Union Avenue and blocks Union Avenue. And so it's going to be a jug handle that goes out behind this building, and it adds something, if I can remember right, maybe 10 cars into a queue. Super.
Okay, one more quick question. Could I refer back for a second to the potential meetings
Yes.
page? I think that I heard reference that there was going to be a commission meeting in March, but I don't see that there is. So the next commission meeting isn't until July, according to this?
No, there's a commission meeting in March.
That's 2016.
Oh, I see.
Nor is the annual meeting for June. And I think that's considered a commission meeting, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Does the previous schedule cover those meetings?
Sure.
I don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, I think it does.
Oh.
I don't have a word.
Yeah, because our annual meeting's in June, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the commission meetings.
it's probably on the other.
Okay, I just don't happen to have that now.
Okay.
I was going by this. So anyway, sometime in March there'll be, I guess.
Gosh, I think so. Yes.
I have something I just wanted to mention. I was poking around on Facebook the other night, and I happened to get on Carmen Lorenzo's Facebook, and I saw something.
Who is the director of the Lakes Region Chamber of Commerce?
We used to be, now she's
Oh,
on the state.
oh, yes, yeah, it's the other Carmen I was thinking.
Yeah. It said that they're filming the new James Bond movie in the Lakes region in New Hampshire, and mostly in the Lakes region. Has anybody heard anything about that? And there was the closing scene is supposed to be shot at the Franklin Pierce Manse in Concord.
Huh.
I haven't heard anything about it. I thought because she's a pretty reputable person, it might be true, and I was just wondering if anyone else heard about it. It also mentioned that the director wanted to change the name of the movie to Live Free or Die.
Oh, isn't that
I don't know.
Wow.
So I guess no one else has heard about that.
No,
I have no idea.
no, it was in my contract, I've been selected to be the star of that. It was a non-disclosure, so I couldn't bring it up.
That's what the private, the public, non-public meetings about, isn't it?
Yes. Okay, then.
One other thing, it's just too bad we don't have a person from Gilmanton any longer. It'd be nice to know, get update on what's happening in Gilmanton.
Oh, their sprinkler systems letting go in their town. And they're going before their town meeting to request money for modular schools too. So I think Gilmanton's got a lot of budgetary issues to take. But most probably, the sprinkler system will be covered by insurance, I would think.
Yeah, I would hope so.
I would
Thinking of
hope
all
so.
the other stuff.
Yeah. Any other comments on the round table? Then what I would do, our next on the published agenda is a non-public session, and it is necessary. And under RSA 91-A, :3, 2A, states that we can go into non-public session with a majority vote of the executive board. So I would like to ask for a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? What will happen when we have finished our non-public session, there will also be a motion to adjourn from non-public. And then at that time, I'll call for a motion to adjourn the commission meeting. So nothing will be discussed of a public nature. So at this time, if Karen, you please, Rosemary.
Will do.